this Get Ready to Buy Property in Portugal webinar, Portugal Calling from expatsportugal.com. Carl Monson here. Astrid is with us as well this evening.
Okay, thank you everyone for joining us. Just a quick introduction to Jacqueline from Mortgage Direct. Hi Jacqueline, how are you going?
Hi everyone, currently from Brazil, but still brainstorming with the mortgages for Portugal.
Okay, and we've got Sarah here from Spartan FX, which is our preferred money exchange company here at Expats Portugal. Welcome, Sarah.
Hi everyone, great to see you this evening. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us. Back to you, Jacqueline. Are you able to give us a little bit of a property market overview at the moment?
So what I was saying is that we don't advise so much on the property aspect, but we really specialize in mortgages. And in the areas we see a lot of demand is especially Lisbon, Algarve as traditionally very popular, but do people buying everywhere across Portugal? For our support as the mortgage mediator, it doesn't really make a difference because we advise for all areas of Portugal. And we have a big team of people growing actually continuously because we just have a lot of demand going on at the moment. And we see a lot of people buying new build properties as well.
So you specialize in mortgages for foreigners moving to Portugal, correct?
That's right. I think 99% of our clients are non-residents, like probably most of the people in the audience today. And we try to speak to them in a really early stage so that we can establish yes or no if you would qualify for the loan that you're looking for in Portugal.
So what would be the benefit of someone coming to you as a foreigner as opposed to going to a local bank here? Is because you can get things organized before people arrive, or there's different requirements for proof of income and things like that? Is that how you can help?
I think the main thing is what you mentioned first is that we try to speak to people early. So even before they travel down to Portugal, we can start the analysis because we know exactly on what basis banks qualify clients or not. And additionally, if you would go to one individual bank, that might not be the best bank for you, or they might not have the best offer in the market. Whereas we really understand the different offers of different banks and can make sure that you get the best deal out there for you.
Great. And is there any restrictions on where people can come from? Can they come from anywhere in the world and work with you?
Yes, and basically Portugal is quite open to applicants from anywhere in the world. Things that they look at is if you have tax declarations. So countries from a tax haven can be a bit of an issue, but as long as we can prove that your income is earned and declared to the tax authorities, that's kind of a major thing. But basically we have applicants from all corners of the world, yes.
Great. Okay, over to you, Sarah. Could you give us a little bit of an update on what's been happening in the money exchange world?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I thought I would just start with just sort of a bit of an overview of what moves the market. Usually it's normally a couple of things, but I'm covering everything at the moment with what's going on. Usually we're looking at sort of data that's coming out that really sort of shows how an economy is doing. And a lot of that sort of stuff can be forecasted. We look back at trends, and that's kind of what we're basing our forecasts and how we're helping our customers. The other thing as well is sentiment. So any important person, whether it be sort of Biden, Boris Johnson, maybe the ECB President Christine Lagarde coming out and saying something, their sentiment and what they're saying, nothing's actually happened, but that can also move the market. And again, sometimes we have a bit of an understanding of how that's going to go. The things that are really do move the markets, make it quite volatile and are very unpredictable. Obviously, the war and conflict that we're seeing at the moment in Ukraine and Russia. Also politicals, we've got the French elections coming up, and then also anything like natural disasters and pandemics, which of course we've got COVID. So what's happening at the moment coming up is the French elections. Now, at the moment, it's looking like Macron is going to win, so that's priced into the market. So a lot of times what is expected is priced in, and if anything goes against expectations, that's where we see the greater movement. So it is still close between him and Le Pen. Obviously if Le Pen wins, then we could see some volatility in the market there. We saw it obviously around election time with Trump and Hillary Clinton. Again, it can be quite a volatile time, but at the moment that's what's priced in. The pandemic seems to have petered out a little bit with the new variant we had at Christmas, Omicron, seemed to be milder for some people. So we've opened up a lot more, removed restrictions, certainly a lot in the UK, and we're moving more in obviously Portugal and the US. The thing that's really the main focus are two things. One, the war. At the moment, it's still ongoing and that's priced in, but should the war finish or Putin does something, which is obviously very unpredictable, anything's on the table, that again could cause some volatility. What we find is the US dollar is a safe haven currency. So as soon as there's anything happening like the war, pandemic, people will pull out of riskier assets and move their money into the US dollar, which does help to strengthen it. But when things settle down and people become more confident, then they pull out of the US dollar. So we could see that if the war ends. So that's another thing to consider when you're looking at selling your US dollars and buying euros. At the moment, I would say it's really, on a more positive note, it is a really good time to be buying euros, whether you're based in the US, whether you're based in Canada, whether you're based in the UK, Australia. So I'll give you some highlights. So if you've got sterling and you're buying euros, we're, apart from the recent spikes that we've had this year, we're now at sort of 5-year highs. US dollar buying euros, we're 2-year highs. Canadian dollar, we're at 7-year highs, and Australian dollar, apart from the recent spikes that we've seen in April, we're back to 4-year highs. So overall, really good time to be buying euros at the moment.
Thank you very much for your introductions there. Thank you, Astrid, so much for that. I got crashed out just as I was trying to share with you access to the property here in Portugal. This, of course, talking to Jacqueline and to Sarah, is I guess the infrastructure, the financing and moving money around, and I'm sure you'll have lots of questions for them. But wanted to share with you on our site, if I may, for a moment. We have our real estate section on the business directory. Now, let me see if I can bring this up onto the screen for you. I have a number of people who you can work with from the real estate section, which I'd like to just quickly run through, because this is the supply end, of course, and for finding the property. And news is that there's a new service also in Portugal that I want to tell you about as well. But let me just see if I can share this with you onto the screen. Yes, here we go. This is our real estate section of the business directory there. So you can see a number of partners who can help you find the property that hopefully Jacqueline can finance for you, and then Sarah can move the big amounts of money around so that the purchase can be made. We have Project Lisboeta there, fairly new to our directory. Casa Portuguesa, of course, who work closely with EI. Martinhal Residences at the top end, the high end of the real estate scene here in Portugal. Wiley and Partners, you'll have seen Wiley, and you'll have seen Vitor Costa as well on the morning show, possibly. Wiley covers Estoril, Cascais and Colares, as you can see there, Vitor up in the north. Connected in a slightly different way, but surveying, obviously an important part, not so popular in Portugal, as to be said, but surveying an important part, and our very own Thomas Malloy, who is behind this company here, Reabilitajo, and of course the Portugal company with Peter von Noonan. Now, when you find property, these are great people to talk to who can work for you as buyer's agents, particularly Vitor, Wiley and Peter there. Okay, so that's the supply side of things. A new thing which I'll put into the chat as well today, and this is associated with the Portugal News and English-speaking news reporting site in Portugal, propertiesinportugal.com. So I'll pop that in, and that can be something you can have a look at as well as we progress tonight. But back to financing then with you, Jacqueline. I know you've given us a bit of an introduction to yourself and the company. I think there are some commonly asked questions that we could cover. Did you say as well that you were in Brazil tonight? Often we speak to you in the Netherlands. Sometimes you're in Spain, sometimes you're in Portugal. You're in exotic Rio tonight, I believe.
Yes, I am. And they are celebrating Carnival here in April and Easter, everything at the same time.
Lucky you. Beautiful. Fantastic. Okay. So yeah, commonly asked questions then. I know the thing comes up of age limit, which may well get. What can you tell us? Commonly asked questions when it comes to financing through you.
I think the most common questions we always get is like, what is the loan to value? So how much can you borrow from the banks? That's one. Age factor is one, and what sources of income are accepted by the banks. So let me jump on the first one. I hope my sound is okay and not too echoey at the moment. The loan to value for as a non-resident, it's 70% that you can get from the bank, which implies that you need to have about 40% of your own funds. That's 30% for deposits and up to 10% for fees and taxes, which all have to come from our own source of savings. So that cannot come from equity released from a property owned in another country or something of that nature. Second, when it comes to the age, yes, 75 is the maximum age that the mortgage has to be paid off. For some people, we have solutions where we can look at, if there's 2 applicants, we focus on the younger one, but they tend to always look at the person who is oldest in the application. And I think what was my last one? Oh yeah, sources of income. So any income from that's ongoing, identified full via your tax return. These are the sources of income that banks look at. So if you would bring in a large chunk of money and only ask for a small loan to value, doesn't change much that they want to see an ongoing income source that will pay back the mortgage. So that could be employment, self-employment. These are the dividends, anything that comes in the self-employment area, we can, can deduct that if it's specific for someone, but basically these are the things that the banks look at.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much for that. Kim was asking, what's the best way to get in touch with you? Wants to do that already, I think. So jm@mortgagedirect.sl. You need an S and an L in there.com to get in touch with Jacqueline. And we'll ask a bit, you'll tell us, I think, about how to make contact with you as the webinar unfolds this evening, because there's a bit of a protocol to that, isn't there, to make it an efficient process. Sarah, I think there's a few, I think Jacqueline mentioned big chunks of money. So we come back to you with the big chunks of money there and moving them around. I think there are a few more things you wanted to tell us about moving money around and how you go about it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I wanted to talk a little bit more about the property process. As I said, we're not experts. We focus on the moving money, but obviously we deal with a lot of customers that are buying property around the world, and obviously specifically in Portugal through Expats Portugal members. And we generally find as well that everybody's situation is slightly different, different amounts, personal finances, whether you buy the property outright, whether you take a mortgage. But generally, if you're buying it outright, what we generally see is that customers need to put down a holding deposit, can be about 5,000 or 6,000 euros. But again, it varies depending on the property, just to take the property off the market. And then usually you have to pay a 10% deposit. Again, that can vary. We've seen anything from 5% to 30%. So once all the surveys are completed, or you're committed to buying the property, we have seen some customers have contracts where if they pull out at that point, they will lose the deposit. So obviously just really do check that when you're signing any documentation, that you fully understand what you're signing for. On the flip side, we've seen with some customers, if the vendor's pulled out, they need to pay you the deposit because they're committed to the contract. So as I said, obviously you'll speak to an expert and have a good lawyer to make sure that you're dealing with those contracts correctly. And then usually after that, you pay the final balance when you sign. Or obviously, as Jacqueline's talking about mortgages, that's a different process. But if you're paying the balance, once you fully sign, you'll have to pay everything then. So usually this time process can really, it changes for everybody. So from paying your deposit to actually paying your balance, we've seen anything from 4 to 12 weeks. So again, everybody's situation is different and those timeframes do change. But what doesn't change is the fact that when you're looking at buying property to when you actually complete and pay the balance, or you go onto your mortgage, or you're paying a mortgage on a regular basis over X number of years, the exchange rate does move. And so what you're basing your calculation on the day you're looking around that property to when you come back to pay your balance could be completely different. So that's where we really come in to just help try and manage those payments for you, but also make the whole process of buying more stress-free, basically, a lot less hassle. So there's a couple of things that we do as well, which also helps, is that when you're transferring money, large amounts of money, often find that, and it's whether you're paying through a bank or a currency specialist, there is more checks involved. for money laundering because of the amounts that you're transferring. So what we do is we take care of the compliance up front. So you'll need proof of source of funds. So whether that be savings, salary, investment, sale of a property, and then the proof of reason for transfer. So in this case, it will be the property. So you'll have documents that you'll be able to provide for that. So the key thing is that we make sure that we do all that up front so that there's no delays in you making those payments, because ultimately, if you're late on a final payment, you could incur additional charges because ultimately you're in breach of contract, which you wouldn't want. So we do that from the compliance perspective, but also we make sure that we know, we maybe do a test beforehand and we know what the timeframes are of maybe your bank sending the money to us and getting the money to Portugal. Again, we want to work back from your deadlines to make sure that you make those payments on time. The other thing that we do as well, which is really important, everyone should be doing it as well, is that if you're making any payment to any third party, please do check the beneficiary account details. We do that with all of our transfers. We speak to a lawyer or whoever the third party is, and we just double check those details. There could be human error, or unfortunately in this day and age, there are scams going around. So again, we just check to make sure that those details are correct and they're going to the right account. So please do check that as well, even if you are doing it yourself and you're not using us. The other thing as well is if you are using your bank, when you're quoted a rate, that's not the rate that you'll actually get when you make the transfer. It's when the exchange actually happens. So the thing when you're buying a property or paying your mortgage, you don't know exactly how much to send in order to get enough euros to pay that mortgage or pay that deposit or that balance. Whereas with a currency specialist, you know the money, you know the rate, the amount of US dollars, sterling upfront that you'll need to transfer. So it makes sure that your money's not short. So again, it's a lot less hassle because you need to make another transfer to top that account up. Or again, if you're working to a deadline, it's just making sure that that payment reaches that account on time. The other thing as well that we have is that the accounts are in your name. So sometimes what we find is that lawyers won't accept payments from third parties, especially maybe in relation to a property purchase. Often what they require is, in some cases, that the account the money comes from needs to be in the name that's on the property deeds. So again, the accounts are in your name with us, similar to your bank, so you shouldn't encounter any problems there. So again, that's just really with the actual transfers and making sure that we have all the correct details and all the paperwork in place to make sure that those payments go smoothly. But the other thing that we do is really we look at what money you've got available, what are your timeframes, and more importantly, what is your budget? And thinking about what's the price that you're happy with. So we see a lot, you've probably seen on the TV shows that are selling property, they show you around loads of properties and they always leave the best one to last, the one that's amazing and it's slightly out of budget. But it does happen. And we had a customer who bought in Greece and he found his dream property, but it was slightly out of budget, but he managed to get the money together to buy it, but he was really on the limit there. So he bought the currency or fixed the rate in advance of needing to actually pay the final balance, because he knew he couldn't risk it. Even if the exchange rate moved in his favor within that time, he couldn't risk it because his budget was set. So I think that's the other thing that you need to bear in mind when you're looking at the exchange rate is what's your budget as well. While everybody's watching out for a really good rate of exchange, you want to get as much as you can for your euros. Sometimes your budget will actually dictate your timeframes as well. So the options that you have is that you can buy your euros as and when you need it. So it's very simple and straightforward. You can buy those euros in advance. So if you have got a local account set up in Portugal, you can transfer the euros there first, or we can hold the euros on account for you free of charge until you actually need to make those payments. We can monitor the rate for you within your timeframes, and again, keep you updated, let you know if the rate's moving in your favor, but again, letting know if it's starting to move against you, because there are positives and obviously negatives of exchange rate movements there. And if we see, this is your set budget, I can't afford for the rate to go less than this because actually I can't afford the property, then you don't want to find that the property is going to cost you a couple of euro, 100 euros more, a couple of €1,000 more that you hadn't budgeted for. So that's where we come in and try and match your financial situation. The other thing that I mentioned about fixing the rate is you don't have to buy all of your currency up front. So if you think, well, I'd really want to fix the rate, haven't got all the money available, that's not a problem. You can fix the rate with a 10% deposit. So it's not the same as your deposit that you're buying your property, it's completely separate. You just fix the rate with 10% and you pay the remaining 90% when you actually need the money. So it's just another way of being able to lock into the exchange rate if you didn't have all of that money available or want to commit all the money up front to purchase those euros. Also, I've been talking a lot about large transfers, but in some cases the deposit's 10%, so it's a smaller transfer, or perhaps you're taking a mortgage, so you're looking at something that's smaller but it's on a regular basis, and you might think, well, there's not too much of a difference on these smaller amounts, but you're going to be making these amounts on a regular basis, so that you're really dealing in volume, so to speak. So a good example would be, obviously it's great in hindsight, but if we look back over the last couple of years, we look back to June 2020, if you were selling US dollars and buying euros and you fixed into a rate at 110, in that 12-month period, the rate actually went to 120 and 124. So on a 3,000 euro mortgage, that's an extra 420 to, well, 300 to 420 US dollars that you'd have to find to pay for that mortgage if you just took the rate on the day. So when you've taking a foreign exchange mortgage or you're buying a property in a foreign currency, it is really important to be looking at the exchange rates. I think really the key takeaway, I think, for people is don't just see it as a press of a button. I'm not saying that it's difficult to do, it isn't, but I think if you just see it as that you're limiting your options, you could maybe save money by watching the rate and letting us help you do that. And also some people's situations are maybe slightly more complex than others, whether it be with compliance documents, or maybe it's just that you want to speak to someone on the telephone. We're always there to take any questions. It doesn't matter how small the questions are. We're there just to help you make this process easier for you.
Great, thanks. And a big message that I've got from you before is, yeah, don't just assume it's a push of a button and don't leave it too late. Because that can be a problem, can't it? You can start a conversation as early as you like with Spartan, and it's important to note that it's spartanfx.co.uk is the website address, and for getting in touch. If you put your email address into the chat, that'd be great as well, Sarah. There. So back to Jacqueline. Then that's moving the money around. This is getting the money, the finance of the property. Yes. Jacqueline, we got some great questions. This is a good one. Thank you, Austin, for this. Is there an advantage to having a mortgage? And I think by that you mean you've got the cash, you've got all the money and you could pay for it outright, but would there be an advantage to taking out a mortgage? Perhaps there is, because the interest rates are favorable at the moment. We're not giving financial advice here, but what's your experience of that, Jacqueline?
My experience is that even if people do have the cash, they prefer to keep that cash, either they want to keep some money aside for investing in another property, or, once it's invested in the property, you can't just take it out and buy your groceries from it. It's just set there. So interest rates still very competitive. And I think that's the most usual analysis that people make, that they rather have some cash set aside than versus having everything in a property. Of course, it comes with a monthly obligation, but most people are always positively surprised with how low the rates still are in Portugal. I have to say, just as Sarah said, these are quite, challenging political times. So we can't really give you rates and they're going to stay they can change every 2 weeks, but they're still very interestingly low. And most people are very positively surprised with how competitive it is compared to maybe some realities, back home.
Yep, thank you. And some people, we haven't had the crypto question yet, have we? No mention of crypto so far. Some people are saying, you could get the mortgage and invest some of the cash into crypto. Again, not financial advice, but there is no capital gains tax currently on crypto gains here in Portugal. Another reason why people are choosing Portugal at the moment. Great question from John and Pam. Thank you for this one. Is there any difference between buying land versus buying an existing house. How do you approach that, Jacqueline, at Mortgage Direct?
So the question, I guess, would be if you want to buy a plot and build, so you want to build yourself, you can do it. It's not so easy to get as a non-resident. So it's something that the banks are a bit hesitant about because they just, because it's like a stage-wise payment, and they feel the chances of someone not finishing that build are higher with someone who's not a resident in the country, because yeah, you could just stay at home in your own country and not bother anymore with mortgage, and then they have like a half-built house. But yes, there are some banks that do it, and also the conditions don't change as much, but it's a lengthier process, and you also need to have good legal support, which is not my division, but definitely speak to a lawyer to make sure that you have all the licenses in place on time in order to get your project going, because money-wise, the money comes from the bank. They won't supply it until all the licenses have been approved and everything is set in stone and ready to go.
Okay, so that's the big difference, and possibly a little bit easier then to manage the process of buying a completed house rather than all of that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, a lot of people buy new build houses, so they don't have to bother with the project, but then they do have to make a deposit and they have to wait until the project finished. We can't really get a mortgage in place for that, because we can advise if a mortgage is possible in principle, but we would still have to do the application for the mortgage when the property is going to be finished. So you cannot lock that in prior, whereas with a plot and build you could, but then again, as you said, Carl, very rightfully so, it's a bit more cumbersome and lengthier, and you have to have the interest to do so.
Not for the faint-hearted, by the sound of it, I think. But it's many people's dream, so not impossible at the same time. Thank you for that question, John and Pam. Austin, is it easy to open a bank account in Portugal from US? One of our favorite answers, it depends. It can be done. You can do it yourself. A number of people offering to do this for you. Our favorite partners with that, Austin, are EI, Gilda over there, who can open a bank account for you and be your fiscal representative too, which is an equally important consideration. So it can be done, and they can take care of it for you. Get in touch with me, Carl, at expatsportugal.com, if you want some help with that. Leif, thank you very much for this question. Is there a product, Jacqueline, that shows generally fees associated with obtaining mortgages and other requirements which may be unique to Portugal, like maintaining separate life insurance policy? So is this the complete product that you're looking for here, Leif? You might want to unmute yourself and ask that.
No, just general. So I would, of course, follow up with Jacqueline, to answer more specific questions, but we just kind of need a rule of thumb type of documentation, that type of thing. Thanks, Carl.
Thank you.
So in terms of documents or requirements, so just like what the cost would look like. So that's something that we do when you would speak to us, Leif. We make an assessment in terms of you as the applicant, but also the purchase price and the mortgage requested. And then we give you a cost indication at early days. So you have something to fall back on. It's an indication, but of course it's a very well-based indication. Yeah.
Perfect,
Okay.
Thanks, we'll follow up.
And you were asking also, Leif, is there a mechanism to lock the rate while documentation is being processed? That is a great question. Is that possible, Jacqueline?
No, you can't. They can basically change it until the last 2 weeks.
Yes.
From my experience, I haven't seen with any client that from the moment we send the application into it being signed, that the interest rate went up.
Okay.
So usually they tend to respect what they offered you. So let's say today with Leif and me, we go to a bank today, we get a mortgage approval, or we get a mortgage offer from them, and we are going to complete in 2-3 months for some reason or the other. Usually you're going to sign the same thing as they offered on the day. I do have to add that the political instabilities can create frictions on the rates, but even in the last 6 years, we've seen quite some things. We haven't seen crazy rate jumps all over the place.
Okay, thank you for that.
Maybe the last thing I wanted to add to rates and things changing, something that is relevant that has been changing. So I've been doing this for 7 years now, and you have a variable and a fixed rate. Usually most products offered from the banks is a mix of that. You can choose for complete variable, but completely fixed. Maybe for 10 years it's possible, but not for 20 or 25 years as you might be looking for. And Euribor, which is where the variable rate is based on, has been going up recently. So that is something decided as an interbank panel within Europe. So there's 15 banks basically fixing in or advising on what that rate should be. And it's a reflection of the European market condition. It was negative, it's still negative, but it's been going up for the last couple of months. Actually, since the crisis in Russia, Ukraine, we've seen it going up. So that's something that can affect the final rate that you're contracting.
Okay, thanks for that, Jacqueline. We have a question about, thank you, Austin, again. Anything I need to know about buying a property with my cousin on a 50-50 ownership. So how is that viewed? The various kinds of partnerships. Should you be married, related? What are the most favorable combinations, and how would that be, buying 50-50 with a cousin?
You can apply with someone who's a family member. You can apply with basically all kinds of applicants. Constructions are allowed. Keep in mind that if you are married and you're not married, you are in the without any prenuptial agreement, then they do a financial analysis on the household, and they usually expect both applicants to be part of the application. So let's say one family is married, the partner with his brother or the partner with his cousin wants to do an application. We cannot exclude the wife out of the application because they're going to do an affordability check on the household in terms of it's just responsible lending criteria that the banks have to adhere to. They cannot just ignore that other person just because two people decide to be in a mortgage application together.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much for that. So any more questions for Jacqueline or Sarah? This is a good one. And I think we know the answer to this. It's from Maria. What is the safest way to transfer the money from my bank to the Portuguese bank to pay my mortgage, assuming that my money should be sent from my Portuguese bank account, which is safe to assume that. I think you've got a safe solution, Sarah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So from a regulation perspective, we are regulated in the UK and in America, worldwide, but specifically you need to have the FCA in the UK and in America, FinCEN, and the money transmitter licenses in each state that you want to operate. And we have those for all of the states in America as well. So we're fully regulated to be able to work with American customers, Australian, UK, Switzerland, Canadian, around the world. The other thing that we do to help reassure customers as well is that we keep you up to date constantly through the whole process. If you're a little bit nervous, we do small tests, but also we let you know when we received your money, when it's been sent out, when it's received by the beneficiary. We contact you by email, but also by a phone call as well. We have an online system, so you can log in and view it similar to your online banking. So you can see your money there. So it's very visible and very transparent from that perspective as well. So we have all those things in place just to try and reassure you and keep you up to date where all your money is throughout the whole process and the whole time.
Okay, that's brilliant. Thank you, Sarah. I hope that helps there, Maria. We'll come back to this one, John and Pam, about the recommendations and advice regarding buying land and engaging a builder. Jean's got a great question. Jacqueline, back to you then. Can you pay cash for a home and then take out a mortgage later? This is refinancing. Simple answer. No.
Yes.
Okay. Yes, it's a no, I'm afraid, on that one. But it's worth a try, Jean. Why is that? Why is that so difficult?
Well, it's risk aversion from the bank. So potentially, let's say, potentially you could do with your money whatever you want, but they want the money that you're getting from the bank to use it to buy the property. Yeah. So if they're going to release the money after you already bought the property, you could also buy a car from it. And instead of it's just from a legal perspective, the moment that I think people might guess it works this way, but the moment you buy a property and you're getting a mortgage, you become, together with the bank, the owner of that property. So the property is the guarantee for the bank as well, but they want to make sure you're able to afford the mortgage. But it's a guarantee, and with releasing that money afterwards, there's still a guarantee that would be registered, but banks just don't want to do that with someone, at least in the market that we operate in, the non-resident market.
Fair enough. And Karen, it's the same answer, I would say. How difficult is it to get a mortgage to do renovations on a house you previously purchased with cash? So same again, right? Remortgaging, it's not the something can be done easily.
Not easily, but that's the only route through which it could be potentially done.
Okay, to
Not
finance serious renovation.
Yeah, but there should be no mortgage already on the property.
Okay, all right. So and to approach you, Jacqueline, I remember we've talked about this on the morning
Yes.
show about how to approach you in the most efficient way. Could you say a little bit about that?
Well, it's just that, I really like to talk to people and learn everything about you, but I'm really limited on time. So what we try to do to be as efficient as possible and try to commit to our 2-day feedback loops, because that's what, as a company, we set out for. Just drop me an email saying, here I am, I saw you on Good Morning Portugal or on Expats Portugal. And then you go into our very advanced database system. I will be the one sending you out an email or calling you if it's something urgent we need to talk about, but usually send you an email to fill out our application form. Right. And if I have the application form back, then I can also commit to do the analysis as quick as possible, because I can't give a mortgage advice if I don't have the most relevant information summarized in a quick to check fact file.
Yeah, okay. But you like to do a 48-hour return call to people and have that efficiency.
Our commitment as Mortgage Direct is that when someone sends in the form, that from that day they send it in, they get a confirmation too, but via email, and we try to be back with you in 48 hours, unless the weekend is in between or some holidays. But yeah, that's
fair enough. That's fair enough. That's excellent. Talking of great customer service, just very quickly here, we hear from, who was this who was saying this? Lowell, thank you. I've been using Spartan to transfer US dollars to euros. They are fantastic. Very, very customer oriented and step you through the process. 2 thumbs up for you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
Oh, Carl's gone. But I say thank you so much.
Oh, is he frozen again?
Feedback.
Oh.
I'm hanging on in there. We've got more questions to ask. Thank you, everybody, for these. I'm popping in and out.
You make it extra exciting.
Well, yes, well, I am on the edge of my seat if nobody else is. What's the average difference in interest rates if I buy a property as a foreigner versus being a resident? That's a great question, Maria.
They don't make any difference there. So that's really nice of the Portuguese banks. They're really welcoming in that sense to the foreigners. So there is, at least at the banks that we work with, there's no distinction between being a resident and non-resident. Sometimes it can even be beneficial because the additional products required to take out the mortgage is less. Like, for example, life insurance with some of the lenders is not required, where that could be a requirement if you are a resident in the country.
Okay. Superb. And that would, I think, relate here to Monju's question as well. Would we be considered residents if we are in the country on a D7 visa? So it doesn't really make a difference, does it? It's academic from the perspective you've just given there, Jacqueline.
No, and from the bank's perspective, it's really like where have you been declaring your taxes for the last 2 years, and what is your document built up? That's the resident question. So the only difference that can make is loan to value. But some people think that, oh, I became a resident today, so I'm eligible for 10% more, which would be, or even 90%, which would be available for a resident. Yeah. But they really look at history, and in essence, you're still a foreigner, and the chances of you defaulting for them in their view is higher. So it's not so likely to get to 80%. 7% is really the maximum risk the banks take.
Good to know. Thank you for that, Jacqueline. Sarah, you've got people answering questions on your behalf here. Igor has been helped out already by Lowell, saying also, you're awesome, thank you. And Hamid and Patty, I agree with Lowell. Spartan FX has been awesome in transferring dollars to euros for us, so that's really good to know. Igor, if you do need any further help, just pop your hand up and or pop the question in the chat there. We'll go to hands up, open questions in a moment when we end the recording. One more question for you, Jacqueline, from Desiree. And I'll go back to that question as well from John and Pam about getting help over here on the ground, literally. But Desiree asks, how much weight do they give the younger person in a mortgage? If my son joins me, he's 40 years younger.
They tend to look at the oldest applicant. So you could think about just basing the mortgage on the son.
Yeah,
that'd be maybe an option to think about, to make it more to make it manageable and to make it acceptable.
All right. So we've got it. We thank you very much for that, Jacqueline. And yes, please confirm contact details for Sarah. Let's make sure that happens. I daren't touch any buttons just in case I crash it. I'm going to give it a go in a minute, but so we need to make sure we can get in touch with you, Sarah, as well. And Jen, yeah, you and me both. I must have missed the answer. What is the current interest rate then, Jacqueline, in Portugal?
It's somewhere between, depending, so if it's variable or fixed, that makes the difference.
Sure.
With a variable, you always get the bank spread, and they're either going to add the Euribor to it, which makes it then the variable rate, and they look at what's happening in the market in terms to establish on the day itself what is going to be your fixed rate. So that's the swap rate that's available. So to give you like an exact, I can't give you, because each day, again, that's established, but it's somewhere between 1.5% and 2%, maybe a bit above 2% for the fixed rate, and then 1.5% and something below for the variable one.
So there you go, an indication there for everybody who wanted an idea of what the interest rate would be.
Can't guarantee.
Of course not. No, we're not expecting you to. With that caveat there, that's just an indication at the moment. So final question then for the recording. What recommendations, advice do you have regarding buying land and engaging a builder? Sounds like it's better to be a resident. I think that is probably quite a good approach to take. I just want to have a quick plug here for the Premium Plus membership level that we have here at Expats Portugal. And we launched this last summer, and there might be people who want to give us a nice testimonial in the chat tonight, because I think some of you are here. But we have all sorts of materials and resources that are downloadable, and we have a Thursday evening get together where we troubleshoot and do a Q&A and have special guests. But we're extending the level of service that we're doing with the Premium Plus, because I think what people want, as well as downloadable resources, they want concierge, they want case management. So that's our extension of this product and service to you, is to be available to you, and that's my answer really to you, John and Pam. Is getting help over here. If you can't be in the country, you need people who are, and that would be us, and we'll do our best to help you and connect you with all these excellent associates that we have, like Spartan and Mortgage Direct, who are here with us tonight. And you can do that. You can have our handheld help on a monthly basis for just €37 a month, helping you out over here in Portugal. So I hope that helps with all manner of things, including pointing you in the direction and answering your question there, John and Pam, and so many other things. Before I stop the recording, then let me just see if there is anything else we can say to you. Oh, I've got to read this out. Thank you, Carl and team. You're amazing. Thank you, Lowell. And thumbs up. We'll take that, won't we, Astrid?
Carl again.
Oh, really? I can still see and hear myself, so I'm going to carry on regardless. Thumbs up for the Premium Plus program. It's a great service and very helpful, says Tammy. Thank you for that. Really appreciate it.